you started on that mental journey that people have to make when they transfer. Can you explain more of that mental emotional journey?
I think I think the unfortunate thing about people who want to deliver at home and are planning to deliver at home is that they block out any of the other possibilities from happening. They kind of think this is how it's going to go because I want it to go this way. Because I can't tell you how many people I've heard say, I ended up with a C-section. I never thought that could happen. And I'm thinking, you're pregnant, you're having a baby. How could you not at least entertain the small, if but present possibility that your baby may need to be delivered by C-section? How could you even utter that phrase? I never thought that could happen to me. That's unrealistic. So the mental journey is going from only this is going to happen to, oh my God, now everything I didn't want to happen is going to happen. Medication, an IV, maybe a vacuum or forceps, maybe a C-section, doctors who I wasn't, I didn't want to be around. So I think the mental journey, I think most people probably need some help to get through it from the place of like, if it doesn't go like this, it's not okay. And that's not just people who plan to deliver at home. That's anybody who's pregnant who has a very firm belief in this is the way it's going to go. And I'm going to control as much of it as I can or all of it, because that is so unrealistic that they're bound to be disappointed, at least in one aspect. I have a patient right now who was following a particular diet before she got pregnant. And now I have a dietitian who works in my office, and I make all my pregnant patients see a dietitian at least one visit just to make sure they have the right nutritional, information. And this patient so clearly said, I cannot eat any dairy foods and I will not eat any dairy foods, like as if something horrible was going to happen to her if she did. And the dietitian was just trying to tell her, but you do need calcium. So here's the other ways you can get it. And she was so adamant, no, that when we came away from that, me and the dietitian and my nurse practitioner had a conversation where at first we were like, this is just crazy. And then at the end of it came to the conclusion, this has to be fear. This has to come from a place of fear where she is so much trying to control so many of the things that are happening in her pregnancy that this might be her one little area where she says, I am adamantly going to control this because it makes me feel safer. I mean, she can't voice this, but when we decided to come from that place of like, that's what it has to be, we're not going to argue with her about it. You know what I mean? We're here to give you the information and then you make your own choices. I mean, if you don't get any calcium while you're pregnant the whole time, where are your baby's bones going to come from? Like that makes sense. But there's a way to say that to somebody who obviously is afraid of making a change because that would mean she loses the control to somebody else. That's a rare way to look at it, but I think we have to look at it that way with people who are making these decisions to try to deliver at home or something like that. It's on us to not think of them as like, what dumb people, don't they realize how you can't look at it that way? And when you stop looking at it that way and go, I know you wanted to make this kind of a choice, but the reality is pregnancy, delivery, labor, a lot of it is really not in our control. So let's try to control what we can and leave the rest up to here's all the different things that can happen. So I think it really means breaking a big barrier in the way of thinking. And, as you know, through the Facebook group where people come into it thinking, I just want to hear from people who support my way of thinking. If they're a little bit open-minded and they hear evidence and things that are not bashing things, but just giving you the information, you get in there. You do get a lot of people who go, from the support of this group and the information you've given me, I've really been able to think about this. And not like you're trying to convert me to do what you want me to do, but now I can think about all the different things that I can do. And I think the practitioners have to look at it that way, providing choices, providing information. I always say it's kind of like when you have kids and you go, you can do this or you can do that. But for you, you're only giving them choices that are okay with you anyway, right? And they can choose and they feel really good because they're choosing. saying, and I'm not saying treat my patients like babies, but I'm just saying, if you know what the choices are right, you can do this during your labor, you can do that, you can do this. And they make those choices. I feel like that is part way towards saying you do have some control of the situation. Even something simple as, I say my patients can eat while they are in labor. A lot of other people say they can't. I say it's up to you, but just realize that when you push, whatever you ate is going to come out. So, but that's their choice. If they want to do that, I don't care. That's fine with me. But they're able to make a choice about that. And I think that goes a long way towards people understanding that there are things that are at least limitedly within their control.
One of the things I saw in the feedback group is people come to the feedback group and they're like, I have this problematic history and I would like to have a vaginal birth. Now, this is what I'm really, really interested in. And you're like, wow, you're just not a great candidate.
Yeah, you got to break that down.
And then I say the two questions I came up with is why, what are your reasons for wanting this vaginal birth? And two, what benefit do you think this will give you? And frequently the reasons they give are not necessarily, I mean, they're basically personal preferences. It's like, okay, my personal preferences, I want this vaginal birth. And it's like, and their benefits are, I don't want what happened to me before to happen again. And it's like, well, the vaginal birth is not necessarily going to give you those things.
Right.
You know,
they think so though. They have some idea that it will.
Yes. So it is kind of like, and then you can start talking about, okay, what's a realistic picture of what could happen for you? What do you really want? And it turns out a lot of times what they really want is not a vaginal birth, is what they think a vaginal birth will give them.
Do for them, right?
So once you separate those two things, then it's like, yay, we can have a conversation. And a lot of times they walk away going, oh, well, now I understand what I want and I can make these decisions.
Right. I had a patient that I delivered about 4 years ago who had a very normal labor, a very normal delivery. Baby came out, and for some reason, sometimes this happens, we don't know why, the baby needed resuscitation when it was born, full term, everything. So the mom was extremely traumatized by the idea that the baby had to be whisked away in the NICU, and they never really figured out what happened. So the baby was in the NICU for like 3 days. She was very upset. She felt like this really kind of ruined her whole delivery experience. And she really needed some help after that. Got pregnant again 2 years ago. And for some reason, she connected that she had an epidural last time. And even though we had a conversation about it, and she knew scientifically it really did not have anything to do with it, she decided for the next delivery, she doesn't want an epidural. So, you know, I can't put my own feelings on her about like how I hate to see my patients in pain and you're going to have pain and all this. I said, then let's talk about how you can do that, where you can get through it and not feel like this is a bad experience. And I do have to tell you, that's not a guarantee that the baby will be totally fine when it's delivered this time. Well, P.S., she got a doula. She had a husband who was very sweet, but not helpful in labor. And they both realized that. And I said, good for you that you realize that, you know, he's not going to be your person. She brought in a doula, and the doula was the nicest person, totally deferred to me in terms of like what needed to be done and things like that, but sat at her head. And when she got into active labor, held this girl's face in her hands and just breathing with her. It almost made me feel like, I'm so sorry you're in so much pain. And she would, in between her, you know, bad pains, go, this is what I wanted. This is what I, you know, she never wavered from saying, I knew it was going to be this way. And this is what I elected. And because it was a second baby, it wasn't really that long of an active labor phase. Pushed the baby out. Baby was fine, you know, went home with her and all that. And even though in her mind, she's going to forever connect that having no epidural made it a better experience, she taught me something, because I hate to see my patients in pain, but she got ready for it. She was aware that she was going to be in severe pain for at least a couple of hours, managed it with this doula who was great. And I walked away from there feeling like, if someone really doesn't want the epidural, I can see sometimes, rarely, why they say this is what they want and they want to go through it. But most people are not like that. When they say this is what they want, they feel like this is the way labor is supposed to be. I know it's painful, but it makes me a woman to go through all this pain and everything. No, not really, especially not with a first baby. It's painful and sad to see someone in so much pain for the outcome to be, yes, I get to bond with my baby, which you will anyway. But that I feel like I don't really learn that much anymore from patients, but I felt like she taught me something, because that's what she wanted, that's what she got, and now she's pregnant again.
Oh, so
Mhm.
that'll be interesting whether or not she decides to go for the full experience or the medicated experience.
Yeah, I don't think she'll have an epidural this time either, because now it's a third baby, so it will be even faster. And she feels like she had a good experience last time, and she's coming back to me. So, she
So you
feels
must
like
have
I
done something
supported.
right.
Yeah, she feels like I supported her decision.
It's just really interesting to see people looking, it's just so easy to find support and echo chambers on the
Oh
internet
yeah.
that it's like all you have to do is snap your fingers and there it is. But they won't be
Girl,
there.
mama.
But they won't be there when you have to decide whether or not you need to go to the hospital, and
They won't
that's
be there when your baby comes out damaged. Well,
yeah.
sometimes that happens.
So you get a transfer to the hospital, and one assumes that you get mother and baby both healthy and delivered and everything. How do they present after everything is done?
One of two ways. About 50% of them grateful that someone helped them, save the baby, save them. If they got a nice practitioner and was explanatory and nice, and they felt a connection somehow, they're fine. And the other half want to get out of there as soon as possible, don't feel like they needed to come in, this was a mistake, they could have done it at home, like they go right back into their natural birth world, like, thanks, but no thanks. You provided me a service, but I don't really need you guys. And next time it'll be better. We see that also. So you just feel like, okay, what are you going to do? And thanks for being appreciative, not.
I was wondering about that because some people say, oh, I guess the hospital wasn't so bad, but some people, like the one person who is the in search of a perfect birth person, um, never wanted to have another hospital birth and had hospital birth after hospital birth because she was so high risk. Not even a home birth midwife would touch her.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
yeah,
I think a lot of it depends on the experience they had. If they come in and they happen to get the nurse that's like, you home birth people, blah, blah, you're always putting yourself at risk. And, there are definitely nurses that are not above making those cutting kind of comments to people. I know it because I've had experience of hearing those kind of things. And if they got a doctor or midwife at the hospital or something that was so not like, what are you doing? And, didn't talk to them as a person and all that, they got a bad experience. Of course, they're not going to want to ever do that again, because it just feeds into what they thought in the first place. Everybody's mean and hospitals are bad and all that. Of course, if they have a complication, they won't connect it to what happened before the hospital stay. It would be like, if they got an infection, it's because the hospital is a dirty place and they got an infection, not because they labored for 80 hours at home with broken water, but that's not, I can't say that's the majority. I would say it's probably half and half though.
I want to ask you because I do know of people going into the hospital, delivering their baby from a home birth or birth center, and either whether vaginal or C-section, a lot end up being kind of more C-section. By the time they go in, it's super emergency. They end up getting a C-section. And I've heard many times online that many of them don't go back to see the doctor for like prenatal, not postpartum
Postpartum,
care.
yeah.
Yeah. So I was wondering, do you guys normally try to, like, if you did a C-section or other doctors, try to let them know, like, come back and see me in this many weeks or that kind of thing? Because some will be like, no, they never told me that. And I'm like, I don't think a hospital
There's
is going to let
actually a
you
legal
go.
issue. Once you have a relationship with a patient because you took care of her, you are obligated legally, liability wise, and ethically, as far as I'm concerned, to see them for follow-up. And, you know, if I don't take their insurance or something like that, I still would see them as a postpartum and then give them a transfer, you know, to say, okay, I don't take your insurance. I don't want you to have to come here and pay me afterwards. So go to this other practice or something. And whether they go or not, that's up to them. But it's an obligation that if you see a patient in the emergency room, you don't have to like add them to your panel and see them forever, but you do have to follow up with them. There's a legal precedent for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that a lot. Like it's kind of weird. And some of it I think has to do with a midwife convincing like their client, like, no, you come see me. But I've actually kind of opened a couple eyes where I've been like, but the doctor did your C-section and they should be checking your C-section. A midwife doesn't have surgical training. They didn't do that. Don't you want to go to the same person that did your C-section to have them make sure like everything's good and you don't have an infection and that? And it was kind of like, I didn't think about that. And I'm like, I think you should call the doctor and go see them. Like,
At least
it's
the
kind of like
post-op
that.
visit, you know, to make sure the incision is healing properly.
Yeah. I've heard that a lot where I'm like, why is this I know you don't want to go back, but you don't have to go back to the hospital. You go to the doctor's office.
Mhm.
You go make an appointment.